Well, welcome everyone to another episode of your program, La DRH. I'm very excited because today we have a very special guest. She's a New York Times best-selling author and global thought leader who's worked with clients like Facebook, Google, NBC, Universal, Cisco, NASA, and countless others. She can be found in the top 100 leadership experts to follow on Twitter and number 2 on the Global Guru 2020 list of top 30 leadership professionals. Her podcast, No Ego, has 30,000 downloads per month across 50 different countries. She has over 150,000 followers across social media, and I'm hoping that after today, she adds even more because I think she's that fantastic, and I hope you do too. Without furthermore, the one and only Cy Wakeman. How are you, Cy?
I'm good. I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Cy, for being here with us today. It's a real honor to have you here in our program. And before you start, I just want you to know, people don't know this yet, but I have been seeing you over 3 times on stage in different conferences across the US. And it's incredible how in every speech you give, I learn something new. And I hope all the audience will do too. Now, I know you have been studying drama for more than 20 years now, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what was your motivation behind that? Why study drama? And I just love that you call yourself a drama researcher.
Thank you. So I started my career as a therapist, as a counselor, and I was a social worker. And so I would meet with clients and weekly, and they would come to me and they would want to be happier or get better results in their life, have more success. And I found that I was teaching everyone who came to me the same things. They needed to know how their mind worked so that they wouldn't get played by their own ego. And they needed to know how the world worked because so many were arguing with reality, which is like an argument you will lose, but only like 100% of the time. So as I got promoted into leadership, I thought, I won't have to teach people these things. And I found out that everyone I was leading, my colleagues, my boss, didn't know these things. And so they would get into a lot of drama. And I started to notice how much time and energy was taken away from the results we wanted or just people's happiness at work. And they always believed that the reason they were stressed or suffering was their circumstances. But as a therapist, I could always see it was just the way they were thinking. And so it just became such an obvious problem to me that there was all this emotional waste in the workplace. And if I could quantify it, and if I could teach people how to ditch it, that would be a big contribution.
Okay. And I also know that in the reality-based leadership, that's your company, is known for its stop judging and start helping. And that all your employees always have like this tag that says, how can I help? And it's really impressive. And I want to know, what did you find, or why is this relevant to be always asking, how can I help?
Well, I think when we approach situations or problems that come up or mistakes other people made, we can either do what I call toggle down and get into our own ego and judge and be critical and separate and really continue the drama, or we can do what I call toggle up, like we can move up into our best selves and we can just give our energy to not judging but helping. And that process became important to us. We came up with a mantra, stop judging and start helping. So that question is something that instantly gets us putting our energy into how can we support our team and what could add value to our clients, to our customers, what can we do next that would help. And it's just a quick way to get us focused on the right things. And instead of moving out of relationship with our team members, to lean into relationship and recognize we're all human, and that the best thing I can do right now is not judge you, but add all my energy in to help you and move us forward.
Okay, awesome. And Can you tell us a little bit about the data and the cost that the drama represents in the workplace for a company? I know you have made a lot of research around this, so can you tell us a little bit about this?
Absolutely. So when it came to me, all the waste that was out there, we were doing lean process improvements. And a lot of people were focused on, in this one process, if we can get rid of like minutes, that would be such a good contribution to our organization. And I'm sitting there watching drama take more than minutes. And I'm thinking the only way people will understand this is if I quantify it, because everybody just thinks there's a cost of doing business, especially in HR. If we have people, we figure there'll be conflict and personality issues, and we've just accepted it. But I knew it didn't have to be that way. So I quantified it. In my research, I found the average person spends 2.5 hours a day at work in drama. That's 816 hours per year per head count. Not only lost productivity, but time people spend feeling miserable when they don't have to, because they're suffering because of their own stories, not the reality. And so it just seemed to me to be a major contribution I could make. And so that's what I've researched for about 20 years.
Wow, that's a lot of time wasted for the company.
Wasted. Right? Yeah. And for your own life, right? Because you start to think that your boss is the wrong one or your job is the wrong one. You don't realize that you have so much more power than you think you have to move through life differently.
Yes. And emotional waste. You talk a lot about this. Can you tell us about what emotional waste is and how does it affect the workplace? And what are like some typical maybe drama that generates emotional waste that the leaders must deal with every day? Has it increased or decreased in time?
Yeah, so when I first started studying drama, it was about 2 hours a day. And now it's gone up to about 2.5 hours a day per person. And, you know, people think, oh, is it just because, you know, the younger generation has come into the workplace and they're, you know, more sensitive? And that's not it. Some of the ways we've been taught to lead are actually fueling the drama.
Okay.
And leaders are, you know, over responsible for motivating people or for, you know, trying to create perfect circumstances. But typical drama, we all know drama if we listen to the voice in our heads. And even though we're working hard with a grudge. Like we're walking around going, this is sick and wrong. This is not how they should be running the company. I can't believe I wasn't consulted. It's like your ego is having a tantrum. 32% of all drama comes from your ego, which is judging, venting, gossiping, scorekeeping, tattling, comparing, that they got to go home an hour before I got to go home. And it's storytelling. It's creating these stories that I do more than everybody else. I do more than my fair share. It's really just either venting inside your head and judging yourself or judging others and venting, you know, outwardly. Lack of accountability leads to blame, and that's a lot of drama. Resisting change, withholding buy-in, where people, instead of buying in as a verb, people are like, you need to prove to me that the change is going to work, or you need to prove to me that that's a good idea, and then I'll buy in. It's very conditional. And the reality is the change won't work unless you buy in. And so it's not somebody else's job to give you perfect reality. It's your job to use your skill set and your expertise to succeed in the current reality. If reality were perfect, we wouldn't need any team members.
And just talking about that, what have you find about the role of a leader? Do you think a leader should be there to motivate and to improve morale of their employee? Is the leader role to keep the employee engaged, or who's its role to be engaged in the company? Because I've seen statistics that this role or that the engagement with the company has lowered. The employee are not engaged with the company, and sometimes they go like, oh, maybe because a leader, it's not motivating them enough. So what do you think about this?
You know, I think that's where we've gotten what we call in the United States, like really dysfunctional, really unhealthy, because traditional leadership has said, you know, employee, you're not responsible to stay motivated. Your leader needs to motivate you. And when people quit their jobs, they say, I quit because of my leader. Even engagement, they talk about leaders needing to keep other people engaged. And coming from a therapist background, I know that it's not even possible for me to motivate you. Now, maybe I could screw that up as your leader. I could make it hard to motivate, but I give the same talk to 1,000 people. Some are motivated, some aren't. That's their choice. Motivation's what they need to bring to the table. And that's where I find it dysfunctional. Like, engagement, happiness at work, the research says it's more connected to the amount of accountability one takes, not their circumstances. And we really over-rotated that leaders have more of the responsibility for employees' satisfaction even than employees do.
Okay. And also something that really stick to me when I read your book, I actually have it here with me. And I have your autograph also. So yeah, it's true. And something that really stick to me when I read the book was this question: what would great look like? What would great look like in this situation? So can you help us, or can you please tell us more about this concept and how it can help turn around our reality with one of our coworkers' reality also, right?
Absolutely. So, if leaders aren't supposed to motivate, or they can't, or engage, like, what is the role of a leader? And so I believe modern leaders, their role is to facilitate good mental processes so that we can ditch the drama. And what does that mean? So if drama is emotional waste, how do you get rid of waste in the workplace? You improve a process. If it's emotional waste, you got to improve a mental process. And that most people aren't using good mental processes. And a mental process that we have discovered is self-reflection, right? Is the best drama diffuser. And so there's these great questions that really, if you're in low self and you're seeing the world through the lens of ego, can pop you right up into a whole different part of your brain. When you're in ego, you're in this primitive part of your brain. When you toggle up, we talk about you're in high self and you're naturally collaborative and innovative. You're using all of your brain, all of your intelligence. And so my favorite question is, what would great look like? So a lot of times I start people with, what do you know for sure? Because if you really check the facts, your story is what's creating your stress, not your reality. And then once you know the facts, we all want to help. So what could you do next to help? What could you do to help is wonderful. And then there's many times that this situation has plenty of responsibility to assign for everybody. So my favorite question is, what would great look like? If I were great right now, what would that look like? Or if I'm a leader, I would say, if you were great, what would that look like? Because that gets us out of who's right, who's wrong, what happened, what should have happened. It just instantly pops us into, I can make a difference. And that's what we're all looking for at work, is to have impact. So like, if you come to me and you say, shipping made a huge mistake and the package didn't go where it needed to go and everything is screwed up, if we start problem solving, we're going to problem solve what shipping should have done. Yes. Instead, if I can just say, right now, if you were great, what would great look like? That can pop you into, I'll get on the phone, I'll talk to the customer, I'll make sure that they have what they need, I'll give them a credit, and all of a sudden, we are managing our energy away from why we shouldn't have to and why we can't to how we could. And that gets us immediately being part of a greater tomorrow and a greater future. And we have impact, which is what we all crave. And it also helps us when we go home at night. When I go home at night, it doesn't matter whether people deserve my help or not. I'm not here to only give those who deserve help. I go to bed at night knowing that I did my best to be my best every day. And regardless of what other people are doing, that feels great when I go to sleep at night. I feel good about that. I came here to make a difference. And just when I was going to make a difference, my ego gets hooked on whether they deserve it or whether it's right or wrong or who did what. This keeps me out of my ego so I can keep making a difference.
Wow, Sai, I love that. How powerful, because sometimes it's easier to do things for people that we like or that are close to us. But when someone maybe we disagree with them, or we think that they did something bad to us, it's really hard for, oh yes, let me go ahead and help you. But like you said, and you're the drama researcher, all the drama that's across when something goes wrong, the first thing that you do, like, oh my god, who made the mistake, where did we fail, instead of solving the problem and looking for something bigger than that. So that's right. And my next question to you is ego and confidence. Sometimes people confuse these two terms, and I think it's very important to clarify this. Can you tell us about what are the main difference between these two concepts?
Sure. When I talk to people about ego, they're like, but don't you need ego? I mean, like, don't you want to walk in the room sure of yourself and confident? And they get in really confused. So I'm glad you asked that. So ego is when I walk in the room and I know that I have the answer. I know the way. People should listen to me. I'm smarter. I alone kind of know how we should be doing things. Confidence is I'm confident that I can provide a great data point to our crowdsourcing. You know, if we're a Google search, if we come into a meeting to figure out the solution, it's just like a big Google search. There's 20 data points. I know that I provide a good one. I'm confident of that. But when I start believing it's the only one or the better one or the more valid one, that's where we get polarized, and that's where our energy goes into winning, losing, rather than innovating and improvisation to get to the right solution. So it is really a big difference. I hope to walk with confidence, and I even say things like, don't take my word for it, try it out for yourself. Like, take this and make it yours, add to this what you know, and let's figure out how to walk forward better. And it gets all of us out of that I have to know, because if we come with the ego, we'll never be vulnerable. And Brene Brown talks so much about vulnerability. But if we come with confidence, the ultimate confidence is admitting I don't know, or the willingness to be vulnerable. Only confident people can be vulnerable. Egotistical people will never be vulnerable.
Okay, I love it. Yes, and sometimes in Mexico it happens that when you see the boss, whatever he says, that's like the truth, the only truth.
Yeah.
Even though you have a better idea or you can solve it differently, no, like what he says, that's what we're gonna do. And if you said something different from the boss, you're gonna get in trouble. So I think that leadership should change to this concept of confidence and let their ego maybe in door, so they can hear more about what their team has to say, right? And this comes with a next question, because you talk a lot in your book about venting and the PMW, which I loved. So I don't know if you can tell all the audience, what does venting and the PMW stand for?
I will do that. One comment on culturally, I don't know if you know this, but I'm just south of Todos Santos. I'm in the Baja right now.
Oh,
We have a house in the Baja. So I understand a little bit. That's kind of gringo culture, but I understand a little bit about the Mexican culture. And part of it is that, yeah, the boss, you know, what they say they think should go. But part of it is too that we step down and then make up that story about why we had to. Because I've been in meetings where I have said, well, maybe here's another data point. And people are like, I can't believe our boss, entertains that. And how many times do we not step up and provide something because we're living in an old story that maybe isn't true? So venting is the ego's way of avoiding self-reflection. And venting isn't sharing a feeling. Like, I feel scared and concerned for all the people I care about in Mexico while we go through COVID-19. That's a feeling. Venting is when I get into my opinion and editorializing about everything, and, this particular governor or this president didn't do the right thing, and these people are stupid for not wearing masks, and that's the venting part. And so feelings are there, but venting is what causes us suffering. So venting is complaining and taking other people's inventory and judging people. BMW, a lot of us know that as a fancy car, but that acronym stands for me bitching, moaning, and whining. Okay. And what people tend to do, instead of speaking up and trying to move the problem to a solution with all of us in the room, we stay quiet, and then we go to the meeting after the meeting where we all get together and talk about what somebody should have brought up in the meeting, which is more drama. And BMW driving brings us to critique our reality, and we come to think really unhealthy thoughts. Like, if only reality were different, then I would be a rock star. Like, if only we had more time and more money and better bosses, and that gets us all focused on us being victims, that we're victims of reality, instead of us focusing on what could I do to help, or what would great look like. And that's why the act of self-reflection takes us out of venting into collaboration and innovation.
Yes. And talking about that, how can leaders and employees in the organization add value and generate great results? How can we stop the drama, the venting, the ego, the BMW? What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, the main thing leaders need to do is foster self-reflection and no venting. So when people come in and they're venting, I, try a couple of things. I'm like, time out. Let's focus on how we could help. That's why I go, do you have your badge? Does it have the question, how can I help on it? Who are you upset with? Go ask them how you can help. If they can't get there, when people are venting, I try and say back to them things really neutral to send a message. So I work a lot in hospitals. So people come up and they're like, oh my gosh, they just dumped that patient on us. And I translate for them and I go, we have a new admission. So what should we do? So that I'm setting these boundaries as a leader. I definitely do not go fix it for people, and I don't collude with people that we're the victim. I call people to greatness by saying, asking a question for self-reflection. What do you know for sure? Is that true? Can you possibly know that to be true? Those types of things. So leaders really need to help people self-reflect. Because as I said, venting is the ego's way of avoiding self-reflection, and self-reflection is the ultimate drama diffuser. And it's also the foundation of accountability.
Yes, I love that, because sometimes some employees come to you and they're like, I love the example of the nurse that you put in your book, that she was like, oh my God, yeah, I'm gonna fix that, and then she goes and we make more and more and more drama and more people involved instead of really fixing the problem, right? And this comes to my next question that goes, what should the HR department of an organization do to avoid also all this drama and the high cost it represents? Can you give us some advice? Because I know that people go to you and they say like, Cy, do you have a minute? And then you said in your book that it goes to 45 minutes and you cannot go to the board or the C-suite and tell them, oh, you know what? All this month, what I did is I just heard all the drama and the BMW of everyone. So what can the HR department, because as an HR, sometimes people come to you and they're like, oh, you know what, this person made this meeting, so I wouldn't go because they hate me and all of this. So what should we do as an HR department to stop them?
So much of what we do in HR is what we call enabling. It's codependent. It is fueling the drama, because when people come to us, we think our job is to listen. And a lot of people will say, hey, do you have a minute? And for instance, in HR, when I first started as a leader, HR taught us to keep an open door. And I'm like, you guys, that is just a portal for drama. And they're like, no, you need to keep an open door. And if people have a feeling, they need to be able to come and tell you about it. And I kept saying, but most of their feelings are about stuff that never happened. It's stuff that they just made up. Like, they are mad about things that never happened. And nobody could really understand that. So when people would say to you, Cy, do you have a minute? I would say, sure. But what I noticed, because I'm a researcher, is the average, hey, do you have a minute meeting lasted 45 minutes in length. And the typical conversation was bitching, moaning, and whining, people who weren't present. They hadn't talked to them directly. They hadn't asked for what they needed. It was speculation, worrying about the future, talking about things that never happened. And after 45 minutes, the typical conclusion was, please don't do anything. I just wanted you to know. And what I have just done is I've enabled that person to not have to be an adult and professional and go work it out with the people they have a conflict with. We created a triangle. And then they come to me with all this unprocessed work. Those of us who got into HR tend to process the work. We're like, oh, this is what needs to be done. This is what needs to be done. So then we take action, and they have no responsibility. We take the action, and they never learn the skill set of how to talk to people and how to move through conflict. We enable and coddle and protect them from that. So I'm not saying that you don't want to be open in HR, but I'm saying that you need to adopt tools, and I give a lot of them in No Ego. You need to adopt tools that takes the person from their emotional state and leads them through self-reflection so that they can process their own work, so that what would be helpful, what great would look like, becomes obvious to them, and then support them as they go do it. Like, you were fine when they came in. It's their job they're struggling with.
Yes, and actually one of the tools that you talk about in your book is the S bar. And I actually used it since the first time I heard it because I loved it. So I want you to help us explain for the people to hear about it, because I think the S bar is just wonderful. So if you can tell us a little bit about this tool so people can start using it also as I do.
Sure. So the S bar is an acronym. It's S, B as in boy, A, R. And it's just a template to assist in self-reflection. And when people say, Cy, do you have a minute? I often say, do you have an S bar? Because I want them to bring me processed work that they've self-reflected on. And that's what I mean when I say people get upset about things that never happened. If you hear their story, and then you see their S bar after they've had to edit their story down to the truth, it's completely different. So when people are all upset and I say, can you do an S bar? The first thing I need them to do for the S part of the template is they need to boil down what is the issue, what is the situation in a sentence. Like, some people come in and they're like, well, it's unsafe. And I'm like, is that true? And they're like, well, no, you could do it safely, but it's unethical. And I'm like, is that true? And it finally might get down to sometimes, or a lot of times, the S is, I don't like it, or it's not what I prefer. Then we don't have to work on it anymore. But a lot of times people have to get it down to like, what is the issue? There's inconsistency in how we do this work, so there's waste. Yes. Perfect. And then the B is the relevant background. And I always tell people, like, we don't work for the History Channel. Like, in the States, there's a channel that all they play on TV is history, from ancient civilization. And some people come into me and we just need to know what's happening today and what's relevant. Because a lot of people go into this big long story. They're like, well, you have to go back to 63 when these owners bought this business and he got a promotion and I didn't. It's like, don't hold all that stuff. Relevant background usually is, here's what you need to know about where we're going and how this fits in. It's relative a lot of times to the future. Then the A in the S bar is the analysis or assessment. Have you sought the truth? Have you looked at the data? A lot of people come in and they're like, we get 1 million technical calls on this product. And I'm like, 1 million? Like, we don't even do 1 million calls in our call center in a year. Like, really? They're like, well, thousands. And I'm like, well, let's pull the data. And they're like, well, 4, calls. And the reason they overestimate that is maybe it's a call about something they don't understand or they're not very fluent in. So it feels big, but it's like, what's the data? What's the assessment? What's the reality? And then I want people, the R is recommendations, plural, more than one. So when people come, they don't have to have the solution, because today's problems, a lot of the times, the solution involves a lot of different areas. But I want them to come with recommendations. And if they only have one, it's usually their ego talking, like, what we should do is this. That's just your preference. I need people mentally flexible, like, we could do this or we could do that. This would be lower cost, but higher risk. This would be more temporary. This would be more long-term. Like, I want people to get out of the judgment about what we have to do and think in business terms. What are some of the possible solutions so that we all can identify the risks and how we could mitigate them, and it's not personal. So when people come to me, they go from venting to the S-bar, because it's processed, we're able to move through it really quickly. And then I, as a leader, can coach you on real things like, you're not very clear on the background, or here's better critical thinking for the assessment, or in your recommendation, you don't want to consult engineering, and we definitely need that involved. So I can coach you on real stuff.
Yes, and instead of solving, because sometimes as a leader you want to solve everything and just tell your people, like, no, just go ahead and do this. You help them develop this skill so they can learn how to fix them out by themselves and solve the problem by themselves. And this
absolutely, and that's the deal, that then your succession plan, or who can replace you, you've developed them. And most of us as leaders, when people bring us a problem, we do one of two things. We jump up and fix it, which robs them from their development. And then we complain about them later that we have to do everything for them. Yes. Or we jump in with them and collude, where it's like, I know that other department is the problem, and we reinforce the victim mindset with both approaches. If I fix it for you, I reinforce that you're not capable, that I don't believe in you. And if I collude with you, I reinforce that we're helpless.
Yes, I like that. And also, I would love to hear about the 3 major flaws that you talk in the book, that I love them, that you said, like, every person vote counts the same, perfecting employee circumstances will drive engagement, and engagement drive results. What can you tell us about these 3 flaws?
So in HR especially, we have started to focus on people's engagement, and it's like, how can we create the right environment that will motivate the people? Then they'll give us their best work. And so we do these surveys, and when I looked at the surveys, and it seemed to me that the data was corrupted, because everybody's vote, we think, should count the same. Their opinion, whether or not they have expertise on that, whether or not they're willing, no matter what their performance is. And so, everybody's not the same. We have somebody at work who's really accountable and hard driving. Let's call her Debbie Driver, or Dora Driver. I'll make it more Latina, like Dora Driver, right? Or, we have Victoria, the victim, and their view of the world is not the same. If somebody's low in accountability, when they're in pain, they automatically believe it's the leader and the organization's fault. If somebody's high in accountability, they look at what their part is, and then they ask for what would be helpful. They're able to sort it out differently. So I started to, in my research, find ways where I could take engagement data and we sort it by accountability level, so that you're diffusing the drama. You're not taking into account what the victims are saying. You're focusing on what the mid and high accountables are saying. And when I lead people, people will say, Cy, you play favorites. And my response is, yes, I do. Do you want to be one? Because it's not that I want to discriminate against you because of, where you were educated, or your background, or what language is your first language. It's like, it's not about your diversity, but there's room for everybody to be a favorite. But we've got to realize that a lot of times anonymity in a survey gives people the ability to, like, troll you, so to speak, like, just give this critique without any facts, and And it can be really harmful for a leader. We forget about what the leaders are going through when they're reading that. And so that's the what I mean by every vote shouldn't count the same. Right now with like COVID-19, there's a lot of people out there giving a lot of opinions on social media. Yes. But I'm in the medical field. So when I check into like, what's their expertise, what's their credentials, did they study, viruses? It's not evidence-based. And so it's fake news. And right now there's just a lot of fake news out there. And we make employee and company decisions based on bad data because we try and listen to everybody. The second thing I say a lot is if you are working to perfect somebody's circumstances and believing that will drive their engagement, that's flawed. I know one thing for sure, our circumstances will never be perfect. And so given that we don't have the budget we want, how will we succeed? Given that we have 2 people on vacation this week, how will we still meet expectations? What we need to call people up to is how to succeed given our reality. But a lot of people think that if I make your reality perfect, then you'll succeed and be engaged. And that's just not the case. If you were my daughter, I have all sons, but you were in college at university and you had a paper due, whether or not you turn that paper in doesn't have to do with the environment I create. Did I make sure that you had your favorite type of, Fanta? Did I make sure that you had a comfy chair and a great laptop? And did I make sure that all of your friends were really supportive? Like, if I could orchestrate that, that still isn't why you wrote that paper. You wrote that paper because if you didn't, you'd have a consequence from the professor. And you did a good job on it because if you don't get, above, a passing grade, you will have to take the class over again. People do what they need to do because they know there'll be consequences and they get good feedback and they're held accountable. And then the last one is that people believe engagement drives results. And we know in our research that accountability drives both engagement and results. So accountable people get better results, and accountable people know engagement is a choice. So if I walked into your workplace and you go, this is a crappy place to work, that doesn't mean that that is how I have to experience it, because I know every workplace has issues and my role can be to help succeed in spite of those issues or to help solve those issues.
Yes. And I wanted to tell you something. I don't know if you know this, but about happiness in the workplace. In Mexico, we have a norm that was actually launched last year. And the thing is that the government will start visiting companies to put out surveys and ask the workers if they're happy at their workplace. So what can you tell us about this? It's I know it's funny, but
yeah. So first of all, I love that the Mexican government cares about that, because I care about that. I care about all of us having joy in our work and being happy and, just enjoying it. What I would tell you though, is if you focus on people's happiness without focusing on their shared accountability, their role in their own happiness, we say engagement without accountability creates entitlement. And so then all of a sudden, my fear is what will happen is that workers will think that their happiness is going to come from something external, like their boss letting them do things or having a perfect environment. And that reality, that's not what drives happiness. All the research shows that accountability drives happiness, and not me holding you accountable, not me being mean to you, but that self-reflection. Happiness is more about choices than it is about circumstances. So if you know who's in charge of the surveys, we'll have them do my survey, yes, which includes your accountability level. And that will be a fun project for you and I, Dora.
Yes, I will. I will contact the government so we can do the both sides, because we're only going to have one side of the story. We need both, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, and with all that is going on right now, the remote work, the unemployment rates, how do you think work will be when all of this is over? Will it be the same? Will it change? What is your opinion, Cy, on this?
My hope, now I don't know if it will change, but my hope for all of us going through this is we pay attention, first of all, what we've all been avoiding by staying so busy and buying into that lifestyle. Part of the reason that I live part-time in Mexico is because I just really love the values of, not everything is about how big your house is or success, and not everything is about just work, 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 although so many people work so hard. What I'm doing so that I make sure I come through this more evolved is I'm looking at what I was avoiding by all that busyness. Like what's really important to me and to make better choices in my life. And I also, I'm looking at what's being revealed by this. And I hope that we come through this a lot more humane and caring about the human race and realizing that the way we pay people and the importance of their work is not calibrated, whether that's in a country or worldwide, that we are really clear about what we're doing to the earth and how connected we are and that we're global citizens. And my hope is that, we're going to end up with a lot of unemployed people. We're going to end up with a poor economy. We're going to end up with a lot of people in pain. And there's not going to be somebody who comes and saves us. Yes. What work is like after this is what we decide it to be. So that's a huge opportunity, but we can't move through this as victims and expect the government's going to come and fix everything for us, because none of our governments have those resources. So I think we're finally down to our own accountability is going to determine what our work is like. And while that sounds scary, I'm very excited about that. I hope we don't bring anything that didn't work for us or that harmed people. We don't bring any of that with us, and that we decide, as a world, how we want work to be, and that people's only source of livelihood, in my opinion, shouldn't come from the work that they find when they can have it. I think we need to do better by people. So that's my soapbox.
And I love that. And also, I would like you to share a story about, I read it in your book, about moving from one office to another and the lesson that it gave you to you and your team. And I love what you said also, like, stop believing everything you think. So can you tell us about that a little bit?
Sure. Some of the things I say to people, these little stop judging, start helping. People asking for my best advice. I'm like, stop believing everything you think, because we really believe if we thought it, it's true. We think we're the thinker. But you'll have to sit with this a while because it'll blow your mind. You're the one observing the thinking, and it's when you just believe it unconsciously or consciously, it causes problems. So I was part of leading a group while we were building a lot of new buildings on our medical campus. And we had a big plan for how we were going to do business while we were building. And for HR, it meant that we were going to move 3 different times. So we would move one place while they refurnished one of our buildings. We would move back, and ultimately we would end up in a new building. So as my team was seeing this, of course, everybody, I think, universally hates moving. So they were just like, this is going to suck. This is going to be horrible. And I'm like, you guys, we're the dream team. We can do this. We moved to the first time, and we all got headaches. And we called our employee health department, and they came. They tested our blood. They found out that we had lead poisoning. There was lead in the paint. So when they were doing construction, we were breathing it in. So we moved very quickly. And then the new building we're supposed to be moving into, we could see that building from where we sat temporarily. And while they were working on it, they found out that it was being built on Native American burial grounds. So they tore the building down that we're supposed to move into, and you get the picture. It was like so challenging, even though we knew it was the right thing to do, to not build a building on our Lakota neighbors' ground. So my team, I came in one day and they're like, stop the moving. Like they had pitchforks and torches. Like they were ready to like burn me at the stake. And instead of me calling them up to greatness, I started to sympathize with them. And I'm like, what can I do to help? And they're like, go to the boss, the CEO, the chief executive officer, and stop the moving. And I failed them as a leader because instead of calling them up, I went to the CEO and I was all ready to complain. And I demanded that his assistant get him there. And I was going to stop the moving. And rather than calling him, she saved my career by calling my mentor. And she's like, Cy's up here all upset. She's going to commit career suicide. She's going to tell Doug to like stop the moving. So my mentor came and I was surprised to see her. And I'm like, what's going on? And she's like, what's happening? And I said, my people are suffering. And she said, well, why are they suffering? I said, because we move all the time. And she goes, well, no, that's your reality. You're moving a lot because that's what the organization needs, but why are they suffering? I'm like, because we move all the time. And she was the first leader that separated out the reality, moving, and suffering, which is optional. Like you can move with joy or misery, your choice. And she said, you know what? The organization needs for you to move. Go back and get your teams mobile. The reason they're suffering is they aren't yet mobile. They haven't got the skill set to, be able to move as we need them to move. So I went back to my team and I'm like, you guys, we need to get mobile. We need to be, it seems like we move a lot. So why don't we get so mobile that when they call us, it doesn't affect us. We're like immune to it. And my team wanted to focus on why we shouldn't have to and why we can't. And my job, I realized as a leader, after you separate out reality from suffering, is not to manage people, but to manage the energy of people. I spent my time managing energy away from why we couldn't to how we could. And what I found out is that innovation is natural state for all of us when the drama's gone. If we're focusing on why we can't, we won't get there. But if I'm like, how could we? My team got so innovative and just really blew my mind with what they came up with and how well they did. So leaders, we think we motivate and help by colluding with people and saying, I know we shouldn't have to move. It's horrible, but do me a favor, do the best you can. That's not leading. Leading is saying, folks, these are our circumstances and we need to rise above those.
Yes, and I think this also happens in personal relationships, right? Like, stop believing everything you think, because in your personal relationship, you also like, oh no, I think he did that because he wants me to get mad, right? So I think in your personal and in your professional relationships, you have to stop believing everything you think, right?
Absolutely, because something happens and then we create the story about what happened. What happened wasn't that bad, but we create the story. So like, let's say I see you walk by me and you don't say hello. All I know that happened is that Dora walked by me and potentially didn't say hello. Maybe I missed, where you smiled at me or something. But if I just stick with the facts, they walked by me and didn't say hello. That's not painful. In fact, I can imagine maybe she was deep in prayer and meditation for peace in the world, because I know your heart. I can think good things about you, but what my ego does is it says, oh, she's rude. She thinks since she got that promotion, she doesn't have to talk to us little people. Now she is ignoring us and she thinks she's better than us. Then I treat you rudely because I made up a story, you're rude, and then you respond rudely. And then I go, see, I'm right about stuff I make up. And when I was a counselor, so many arguments between, husband and wife or partners or, people that were dating was not about what happened. It was about the story people made up about what happened. And it's almost like they create that which they fear. It's like, he didn't call. That means that he's with somebody else. He doesn't care about me. He's a huge liar and everything he says I shouldn't trust. And then I spend my night finding evidence to not like him. So when he does come home and he goes, oh my gosh, I had a horrible day, I got delayed, I don't greet him with, oh my gosh, that must have been tough. I'm sorry you went through that, which is what people are looking for. I greet him with, how dare you not call me? And
Yes.
he's like, what do you mean? I saw an accident on the side of the road. I stopped to help. Like, I don't think I like you. You're not very kind to people. And so all our pain, just trust me on this, comes from our stories, not our reality.
Yes, totally agree with you, Cy. And if you could tell us a successful story that you have had with your company and that they ditched the drama, the ego of the workplace, what can you tell us about this? What success stories? I know that you have been working with a lot of companies now. Can
Yeah.
you tell us just one?
Absolutely. So in my own company, when people come observe us, the revenue we produce with half the number of people as our benchmark companies. So we're able to get twice as much done, not because we work night and day, but we work diligently, but people will tell you it's effortless because it's fun and there's no drama. And if people are making up a story, they actually come to you and they go, I made up a story about you and I want to ask you if it's true. So when people join our team, they're amazed by how easy work can be, because work's the easy part. We're the ones that make it hard. But I've worked with like so many companies that are able to create amazing unlimited solutions. Like I work with NASA in the United States, or Google, or Facebook. And the same team who thought their boss was horrible and their colleagues were horrible, the same team who thought they needed a different job and a different boss, found out that they didn't need different anything. They could see the world more realistically, with more truth. And the same world, the same boss, the same colleagues, they were able to create amazing outcomes just by adopting some of these principles.
Nice. I love that. And I hope that more people also in companies in Mexico get to experience all this, because I really love the method. I really love your energy. That's very important also from a leader of an organization. And if you could describe the importance of taking away the drama and the ego of the organizations in just one word, what would it be?
Innovation. And I'll cheat, peace and innovation. It's
Okay.
like when everything is gone, our natural state as humans, we're unlimited. We're absolutely unlimited. And I want to just mention, Dora, so people know, I got to come on today, and I know so many of your listeners are multilingual. We also offer everything that we put out in English. We also put out in Spanish. Ana Creo Marco Store is our colleague who is from Spain. So we tease her, she doesn't speak great Spanish. Just kidding. But she
I know Anna. I have
yeah.
spoke to
Oh,
her.
that's right. So make sure people have her stuff as well. It's very good information she puts out.
Yes. And to conclude all of this, can you please help me complete the following statement? I consider myself a successful person when?
When I show up as my best self and I call other people to greatness and show them what they can do as their best self. So when I can bring out the best in everybody.
Nice. Well, thank you very much. I really enjoyed talking with you. It was a real honor. We love you, and all of my team was very excited to have you in the program today. We're gonna do a lot of work so everyone can hear about this conference and about you and about no ego, because we know now what the ego can do in the workplace. So we're very grateful for you to be here with us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Hasta la vista.
Thank you.